Guys, welcome back to video number 12. We're getting into some really interesting stuff. Last time we talked about President Obama running for office and all of his achievements and things that he did as far as his legacy go. Now let's get into something that you might actually find pretty interesting. And that's technology, right? We live in a world of technology. Without technology, you guys would not have social media. You wouldn't have Netflix, Hulu, whatever, all that stuff. In fact, you wouldn't have the computer to be looking at me right now, right? In this little screen here, you wouldn't have that. So we have this technological revolution, and it really starts in the early to mid 2000s. Yeah, there was stuff that was building to it, but like 2003, 2004, 2005, you see things just explode in the technological field. Now, this sparks really kind of like a third industrial revolution. Um, in terms of advancing and competing to create the newest and greatest technology of the time. So let's just look at cell phones, right? So cell phone ownership in the year 2000, right? There's 202 million people living in the United States. The cell phone ownership was 109 million. So that's about half, a little more than half owned cell phones. And you're like, well, that's a pretty big number. Jump forward to 2018, right? Just 2 years ago, uh, there were 372 million people in the United States. Any guesses on how many cell phones there were owned by the citizens? 404.5 million. There were more phones per person than persons. It's pretty crazy. In fact, the average adult, even today, spends between 3 hours per day on their phone. That's pretty crazy. Um, myself, I usually, and I'm one of those people that really don't use a phone. I still end up using my phone a couple hours a day. You guys probably use it 8 to 10 hours a day. It's pretty crazy. Uh, the average teen, like I said, 7.5 hours. There you go. I actually have the numbers for you. The average age of your first phone is the age of 10, which again is pretty nuts. Now, with the cell phone advancement, right, we see things expanding. Social media became huge and still is pretty huge. It enters the world pretty early on, and you could call even email social media, a social networking. You have a way to communicate with people very quick. Um, but it expanded into the media market in the early 2000s. Now, the first real social media thing that we would see is something called MySpace. Um, you guys probably know of MySpace, but maybe you never had one. MySpace was a social network, which means that you could communicate with other people, post pictures, information, meet people of similar interest. Really, kind of what you guys have now, right? With all your Snapchats, Facebooks, Instagrams, whatever. It was the genesis of all of this stuff. At its peak in 2008 was really the peak of MySpace. There were 75.9 million users, new users per month. So it was pretty crazy how fast MySpace exploded and how social media exploded. Now, the more popular thing, and it wasn't more popular at the beginning, but it has grown, is Facebook, right? And now it's for old people. Um, but it was launched in 2004 and was trying to become another social networking system. Now, initially, it was created for college students to communicate and kind of get to know each other and find people with similar interests. In fact, when I first got a Facebook, I could not sign up unless I had a college email address. And at that time, I was in high school, so yeah, I couldn't get a Facebook. It was kind of crazy. Any case, they did expand outside the college realm, as I'm sure you figured that out. Um, it expanded to 2.45 billion people worldwide. Now, there are only 7.5 billion people in the world, so it is like a quarter of the population have a Facebook. It's pretty crazy. The numbers are insane. I, for one, do not have a Facebook and have not for 6 years. It is fantastic. I'm social media free. Try it sometime. It's great. You don't have to stare at people's food and them telling you that they're on vacation. It's fantastic. Anyway, there are other platforms out there, and just kind of a fun little thing here. If you guys go ahead and look at slide number 630, it gives you kind of a list of users per platforms. So, like Facebook, like I said, has 2.45 billion with a B users. Snapchat, 210 million. TikTok, 500 million. MySpace, still it's around and has 50 million people on there. LinkedIn, it's a professional site, 303 million. YouTube has 2 billion, and Twitter with 333 million. That's kind of crazy, right? Those are pretty big numbers worldwide. Um, so it's kind of nuts, right? So we talked about this technological revolution and how people, I guess, became closer with the ability to talk to each other. But with the benefit of that comes negatives, right? There's never a positive without a negative. And we really saw an increase of depression and anxiety right around this same time of this technological boom, right? So kind of crazy. We've connected each other, but at the same time, we've created this weird world where we have internet bullying. We have people being depressed because maybe they don't have as many friends as somebody else, and you're like, Mr. Kneisel, that's crazy. Depression and anxiety is not that big a deal. Yeah, it is. It's a huge thing, especially with young people today. So America's really seen a large increase of depression and anxiety, especially among young people, you guys. Um, there's a 37% increase of depression and anxiety between 2005 and 2014. Now you're like, well, that might just be, whatever. But those are the years where you see the technological growth. So you could correlate these things together. And it is linked. There's been studies out there that link social media to depression and anxiety. Now, we have a chemical in our brain called dopamine. And when dopamine is released, it makes you feel good. Um, so, what happens when you, let me backtrack. So, say you post something, somebody likes it, it releases a small amount of dopamine. It makes you feel good. That's why you guys get excited and when you hear a notification or something on your phone. Um, But when you don't get notifications, you start getting anxious. When people aren't texting you back, you get anxious, and this does lead to depression. And it's actually kind of it's a pretty big deal. That's really not talked about too much, especially with young people. So let's move on. We're talking very modern now, right? We're going to be on slide 632, that's 632, and we are going to look at the presidential election of 2016. Now, this is arguably the most aggressive campaign in modern time. This whole thing really it's going to begin with 17 Republican hopefuls. Now, 17 nominees that they're not nominees, but hopefuls is a huge number. There's really never been that many. Maybe 8, 10, whatever, but 17 was insane. So 17 on the Republican side and 3 on the Democrat side, right? So Obama's leaving office, so he can't run again. But the country's really looking for someone to lead them and really move forward. Now, we're gonna look at the Democrat side really fast, and there's three people, but there's really only two: Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Now, you've probably heard both of these names. In fact, Bernie Sanders ran for president again this year. He did not make it past the primaries, however. However, he was running. So Hillary Clinton is running for a second time for president. She ran against Obama um, back in 2008 and was ousted. But she was the obvious front runner, right? She has been in politics her entire life. She was the first lady. She was the Secretary of State. And then you had this senator from Vermont who came out and was relatively unknown at the time. Now he's been in Congress for a while, but people really didn't know who this guy was. but he did start a movement, and this movement has continued to today. Now, Bernie Sanders promotes something called democratic socialism. And that's really kind of a fancy way of saying socialism, but we'll deal with it the way it is. Now he's going to call for things like free college, free health care, no deportations of illegal immigrants, and a lot of other ideas that were really not in the mainstream. And this led a lot of young people to really jump on the Bernie bandwagon. They say, "Yeah, we want free college. Yeah, healthcare. We should take care of everybody." And it really started a movement for Bernie Sanders. That was a very close ran primary, right? It was between the two of them, and really, once the primary started, when the state started voting on would it be Hillary or Bernie, um, it got pretty interesting. So in primaries, right? People go out and vote. To get the nomination, each state's going to hold a bunch of votes or hold a vote, and people of that party are going to vote for who they want. Every state has different laws. Like for example, Arizona, you can only vote in a primary if you are registered under that specific um, party. So, say you wanted to I don't know, say you wanted to vote for Donald Trump, but you're a Democrat, you couldn't have voted for him in the primary. But you can vote in the Democratic primary, so you could choose between who do you want to run for president, either Hillary Clinton um, or Bernie Sanders. So um, now Democrats have something interesting with this, and it's called super delegates, which are essentially elected officials that get to vote, and their votes count for more. And you need a certain amount of delegates to get the nomination. So really, a nominee only needs the super delegates. They don't need the normal people delegates to become the nominee. And Sanders actually was doing better than Clinton, but the super delegates kind of gave her the primary win. So she was going to be the nominee for the Democrats. Um, and on the other side, I'll get to Donald Trump here in a second. Now, there is a little bit of a scandal behind Hillary Clinton, and in 2015, it was discovered that Hillary Clinton was using a private email server and was sending classified emails to it. Now, as as a political official, you're not allowed to have a private server because things that you're talking about could be of national security. Um, it's just you're not allowed to do it. No, you're not allowed. That's the law. So they find out that she has this private server, and the server's in some bathroom at some mom and pop shop somewhere. And, Supreme Court says, "Hey, here's a subpoena. There's 30,000 emails we want to see. You need to hand those over so we can check if they're classified or not, and see if you're doing anything really illegal, even though having a private server is illegal in the first place." Well, lo and behold, these 30,000 emails vanished. And it wasn't because they mysteriously vanished. She ordered them to be destroyed. They were deleted. And then there's a program called BleachBit, which makes it so they're unrecoverable. She then she directed her aides to go break all of her devices, smash her computers, cell phones, whatever. They smashed with hammers, and they did. You can look this up. It's kind of weird. But this thing goes through a whole rigmarole. Did she break the law? Did she break any federal law? Anyways, at the time, FBI Director Jim Comey comes out. He says, "Hey, after all the evidence, no one in their right mind would ever prosecute this. She's fine." So we move forward, right? So it's Hillary Clinton is still the Democrat nominee, and on the other side, we will get to obviously is going to be Donald Trump as the Republican primary winner. But how did he get there? Right. So, like I said, the Republican Party had 17 people running for president. Now, the most unlikely of these was a businessman from New York, which is Donald Trump. Now, he entered the race, and people literally made fun of him for entering the race. They're like, "Oh yeah, it's a publicity stunt." Um, and all the news channels, talk shows, media, politicians, I know he's a joke. He won't get past the primaries. But as the primaries got closer and closer and debates went on, he started to increase popularity. And really, it's because of his plans discussing the country, making America first, this kind of stuff. Anyway, by the end of the primaries, it was down to two people. It was between him and Ted Cruz, a senator from Texas. Um, and Trump would end up winning that. So it's between Clinton and Trump at this point in 2016. Now, throughout the presidential run, Clinton's going to lead 90% of all of the exit polls that are taken. So almost every single thing out there says Hillary Clinton's going to win, Hillary Clinton's going to win, Hillary Clinton's going to win. And on election day, election night, so that's on November 6th, 2016, you start seeing state by state by state Trump winning. And it's really interesting to see, and you guys can look them up on YouTube. If you type in 2016 election coverage, there's really interesting reactions to this. But regardless, Trump ends up winning the presidency by over 100 electoral votes and becomes the 45th president of the United States. So, what are his policies going to look like, right? So he believes in a few things. One, he wants to lower the corporate tax rate and make some huge tax cuts for working Americans, which means uh, corporations aren't going to be paying as high of taxes, so they'll have more money to give to the working people, and those working people taxes won't be as high either. He did this actually, I believe in 2017 or 2018, so fulfilled that promise, which is good. Um, Now he does not believe in climate change, which we will talk about. Um, and so he actually says, you know what, we're not going to do this whole thing. And he pulls out the Paris Climate Accords, which are a bunch of countries get together. They all put in a bunch of money, and then they try to figure out how to stop climate change. Problem was the United States was the only one really paying their fair share, and so he said, no, this is dumb. We're out. So he leaves the Paris Climate Accords. Um, he promised to bomb the Islamic terror state into obliteration, and he does. He successfully pretty much dismantles ISIS very quickly. He calls for the United States to leave the Middle East. Now he actually has started doing that. Um, Gets out of NAFTA, creates some new stuff, and wants to repeal and replace Obamacare. Those are kind of his big things, and obviously build a wall, which I'm sure you all know about, which I think we'll talk about here in a second. So bear with me. Now, there's a lot of American discourse. So since Trump had gotten into office, there have been thousands of Trump protests. Now, you didn't see people doing this. You haven't seen protests about a president since Abraham Lincoln. It's kind of nuts how this happened. Um, so the media and government officials called for his impeachment the day he was elected. So the day he was elected, the day after November 6th, or November 7th, like he did something illegal, we should impeach him. Um, and there's really been a radical divide among political ideology, left and right ideas, socialism, progressivism, and conservatism, and Republican ideas. There's a group called Antifa that has grown throughout this. This is a group about anti-fascism. They're anti-fascist group, which goes around pretty much beating up people and silencing people that they don't agree with, which is ironically fascist. But we won't get into that too much. There's been a lot of conservative leaders out there that have been banned from speaking at colleges. They've been harassed at restaurants. It's pretty crazy. So, yeah. Anyway, so we are going to stop there because this video is getting a little bit long. When we come back, we'll be talking about some other interesting stuff like WikiLeaks. We'll talk about the Russia hoax and the Russia investigation, and the Trump tax cuts. But we're getting there. We're really, really, really close to the end of this thing. So bear with me. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me for now. Other than that, have a great rest of your day or evening whenever you're watching this, and we'll see you soon.